My channel being mostly paranormal storytelling channel, ghost sighting is really nothing new. Probably more than half of my contents are ghost stories. But not every ghost sighting or encounter are the typical catching the glimpse of a ghost and getting shocked or suffering a ghost haunting around you. Some encounters with ghosts seem to involve a bit more interaction and more context, almost like normal human interactions. Today, I collect ghost encounter stories that is more than just a shock and horror. Kind of stories I couldn't quite fit in previous themes. A ghost seeking for a company, a ghost asking for help, a ghost making an order of food. Some creepy, others strangely touching. So, here are 5 allegedly true stories of unusual encounters with ghosts. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by a host, Anthony. My friend Tokwan's family used to run a cornmeal shop. It's a disappearing business by now, but back in the 80s, it was still a steady feature in any town. They would grind various grains into flour, turn rice into rice cake, oil various seeds like sesame. Especially around big holidays, after harvest season, or when there was a big festival, it could get very busy. And often they had to start working before the crack of dawn too, for most orders were due to be picked up in the morning. If you don't know, rice cakes taste the best when they freshly steamed and can't be cooked ahead the night before. It was a pretty labor-intensive business that my friend Tokwan, then only about 10 years old, was often around to help his parents. That day too was a busy day, and the family was already up and working at 4 in the morning when a young woman came to the shop to place an order. Not only was too early an hour for a client to stop by, but her attire was also a bit strange. She was wearing a white dress, a white hairband, and some sort of veil that covered most of her face.
I'd like to order steamed rice cake, 10 kilos.
Her voice was faint and quivering. Steamed rice cake, or shirutteok as we call it, is made by layering rice flour and red bean paste in a steamer and cooked. It's relatively easy to make a large quantity, so a popular choice when one has to serve a large crowd. And indeed, 10 kilos was not a small order, enough for a large gathering.
It's a large order. Is your family planning a big gathering?
Tokwan's father asked.
My dad is going to pass away soon,
the woman said. What did she say? That was not the kind of reply Tokwan's father expected, but the young woman just bobbed her head and went away. He wondered if it was some sort of a joke, but she seemed serious enough, and address she gave was correct too, so it was not for him to question whatever the large amount of steamed rice cake was really for. On the day the woman asked for, Tokwan's father delivered the rice cake to the door together with Tokwan. The young woman opened the door, but she denied none of the family made the order. Tokwan's father argued it was she herself that visited his shop a few days ago and placed the order. While the back and forth between them went on, Tokwan peeped inside the house and saw the big family portrait hung on the wall. "It's she, not she," Tokwan exclaimed, pointing at the portrait. "That lady, see? She's wearing the same hairband in the photo too." The young woman who answered the door changed the color of her face. She snatched Tokwan's hand and shouted, "You're lying! Are you saying the woman in the photo made the order? Be honest, otherwise I'm going to spank you." Tokwan got scared and almost tearful at her fierce reaction. His father stepped in.
Stop harassing my son! I confirm he's right. Now I look at the photo there myself. It was indeed that lady who came to place the order.
But the woman didn't back down.
That's impossible. That's my sister who died 2 years ago. How could she order rice cake? You are all lying or mad. Now leave us alone,
she shouted and closed the door to their face. The following day, the father of the young woman passed away in his sleep. The neighborhood whispered among themselves that his dead daughter returned to take her father away with her and made the order for his funeral ahead. It goes 4 or 5 years back. A friend of mine took a part-time as a deliverer for a Chinese restaurant. I and other mates often deliberately ordered something from the restaurant and teasingly welcomed the friend delivering our order.
"Oh, our very own delivery boy is here."
The season was turning to late autumn, winds blowing about fallen leaves on the street. It was about then the Chinese restaurant started getting a regular order. A woman living in the nearby apartment block, she would order a bowl of jjajangmyeon, black bean sauce noodle, and a pack of cigarette almost every evening. It's not uncommon a client asks for an extra errand when he or she ordered food to be delivered. She was such a regular that my friend just stocked up packs of cigarette ready. Whenever he delivered the order to her door, she only crack opened her door and barely put her hands out to pay, saying,
"Please just leave them in front of the door."
My friend never saw her face, but her voice was clear and beautiful, so he didn't suspect anything. The almost daily order continued until mid-January. Then the order started coming scarcer. Every 3 days, then 5, then no more for a few weeks. One freezing day, the woman called again and made her usual order. It was a pretty miserable day to the delivery job on a moped. My friend made a stop at a convenience store on the way and bought a hot canned coffee to put it in the jacket pocket and warm himself up a bit. When he rang the doorbell, the door opened wide. The first thing he noticed was there was no usual warm waft of air from the inside. And then how beautiful the woman was, whom he got to see face to face for the first time. Long straight hair reached her waist, and her pale complexion was punctuated with distinctive eyes, nose, and lips.
"I'm very sorry, but I don't have any cash on me today, nor any cards. Could it be possible to pay later when I make a future order?"
Well, she was a regular, and wasn't she ever so beautiful? Friend assured her there was no problem. He once again noticed how cold the air from her apartment felt. He handed over the still warm can of coffee to the woman.
"You should turn up the heater inside. You may catch a cold,"
Friend said to the woman.
"Oh, you are the one working outside in this weather,"
woman said.
"Don't worry about me. It's nothing for me. Anyway, enjoy your meal."
"Thank you for the coffee. Thank you for everything. Safe ride,"
she said. In the evening, he went back to collect the dish and found a noodle just left outside the door, still wrapped and untouched. He rang the door to check if that was because something was wrong with the dish, but nobody answered. He carried on knocking on the door, and an old lady came out from the next door.
"What are you doing there? That apartment is empty,"
the old lady said.
But I delivered an order just this afternoon, and she was home,"
my friend said. The old lady's face turned pale. and just went back inside without further response. My friend felt weird. On his way out, he asked the concierge,
I wonder if you know, I delivered food earlier to number 609. I find it left untouched. Do you know the young lady living there? Has she gone out?
The concierge's face also turned stiff.
Are you saying she was there this afternoon?
He said.
Yes.
But that's not possible.
I'm sure. You know I come to deliver here almost daily. I can tell it was her.
The concierge's mouth opened, but took a few seconds before he could say anything.
That young woman passed away a couple of days ago.
Only later, friend could stitch up the woman's story from various rumors. She was a young, kind-hearted nurse, and one day was assaulted by 2 drunken neighbors. During the struggle, a boiling pot of water fell on her, which scalded and disfigured her face and upper torso. She quitted her job and isolated herself inside ever since. With no direct family members or close friends, she lived there all alone, till she ran out of money. Water and gas cut, till eventually found dead in a freezing cold apartment. My friend says it pains his heart to think he might have been the only contact from the outworld for her in those lonely, cold last few months for her. To think he was the one she chose to say her last goodbye. I'm an excavator operator, and it's a story my boss said over a drink. Back in the 80s, he was a captain of a fishing boat, a very good one too, often recording the best catch of the day at the port. One of his tricks was dropping the fishing net where the current was rough. It's risky, but often resulted in a big catch of the fish lost in the wild current. That particular day, it took longer than usual to draw the fish net that was swept away in the current, and they were on their way back at dusk. Then a crew pointed out on the sea that he spotted an ocean sunfish. This giant fish sometimes rests floating on the sea surface and can be easily caught by simply harpooning it by its tail. It's quite a pricey fish too, so it seemed like their hard day was finally turning for the better. So they turned off the engine and approached quietly. When they got close within the harpoon range, and a sailor was about to shoot it at the sunfish, he let out a short scream and fell back on his bums. The captain, my boss, quickly looked out to see what startled him so much, and he himself couldn't help but let out a gasp. It wasn't a sunfish. It was a dead body. It was getting dark quickly, and they couldn't risk waiting for the marine police to arrive. They could have fished the body out themselves too, but it was a taboo among fishers and seamen that it was a bad luck to carry a dead body on their boat. So the captain just marked where the body was witnessed and hurriedly resumed their way back to the port. Quite some time later, Captain went to the back of the boat to pee and freaked out to find the dead body was still behind his boat. He jumped into the control room and checked the engine and the navigation, and the boat was indeed sailing at high speed to the port. Captain took an old and experienced fisher to the back to seek his opinion. The body was still there, seemingly going against the direction of the current too. The old fisher's face turned pale.
We are fucked. that is following us, and it will continue until we fish him up."
Captain instructed not to even think about it, and speeded the boat even more. When the port was in sight, the old fisher called for him.
"Come out, Captain. Look!"
Captain rushed to the back of the boat and saw the dead body now floating away, seemingly following another boat that was just leaving the port for the night fishing of cuttlefish. The sigh of relief was short-lived, though. Ever since that day, the catch on his boat fell drastically, and no matter what he tried, could not recover. In the end, he sold off the boat and found a new career in construction. Maybe it was the curse of the dead body to my boss, who refused to take it back to the land. One Saturday last month, I met a couple of friends, and we went to drink, of course. It was a drizzly evening, and I had a rather disturbing dream the night before too, so I left my car at home. "Oi, oi, I had some ominous dream last night. Let's not overdo it tonight," I said, because our gathering would usually end up with we three all passing out.
What dream? God, in my case, I get this weird sleep paralysis these days. I see the same woman every time, and she would ask me to give her something.
One friend said.
"Give her what?"
The other friend asked.
I don't know, a hair tie or something?
Drives me nuts.
I had to add, "Really? I did see this strange woman in my dream too. She would ask me to go somewhere or do something together, and it feels like, like when you try to hook up with a stranger. Thrilling but afraid at the same time. It left me feeling dirty." But the Chinese-style lamb skewers were delicious, and soon alcohol did its job. By the third bottle, we all forgot about our woes and fears.
Hey, let's move on to karaoke bar now. Call in some girls too,
One friend suggested. "Who's got the money to burn?" I said.
All right, it's on me. Let's go.
Just as we got up, we saw women who were sitting next to our table get up to go too. Our eyes met a few times during the evening already, and now the women chatted me up.
"Are you from China?"
Well, I looked somewhat exotic, and I've been mistaken as from a Filipino to a Latino, but now a Chinese. Turned out the women were from China, but of Korean descendants. They were clearly older than us boys, but rather pretty nonetheless. They suggested to carry on to a karaoke bar, and we had no reason to turn it down. So us boys and the women settled in a karaoke bar with some more beer. Just a couple of songs later, one friend was already making out with one of the women. Soon that woman stood up that she had to go, and by the obvious cue, the friend who'd been smacking her away stood up too, saying that he would accompany her back home. Betrayer. Anyway, that kind of killed the mood, and the rest of us left behind soon also parted our ways. The following day, I got a call from the friend who left us first.
Hey, what happened last night?
He said. Nothing. You tell me what you did with that woman, I said.
I actually don't remember well. I know we ended up in a motel, and okay, we did the deed. But when I woke up in the morning, the woman was gone already. I checked my wallet, but nothing's missing.
So what? You had a good time, you bastard?
It's just... she just disappeared without a trace. Except for a hair tie? Scrunch, is it called? Left next to my pillow. You remember I talked about the woman in my sleep paralysis asking for a hair tie?
Coincidence or not, it gave him chills, and he left the motel quickly. He then passed by the Lamb's Cure restaurant we ate the previous night and saw "To Let" sign stuck on its door.
Wasn't the restaurant we ate in on XYZ Street?
Friend said. Yes, it was, I said.
And overnight, the shop is to let. I even peeped in through the glass door, and it was empty, all cleared out. And yet, we clearly ate there, didn't we? And met the two Chinese girls there too.
Yeah. By the way, there were 3 girls.
What are you talking about? There were just 2. I even remember we making a joke about one girl too short. That's why I moved on so quickly, to hook one up before you two.
We ended up arguing back and forth about whose memory be correct. In the end, I called the other friend to confirm, but he didn't pick up. I went through what happened the previous night. After the first friend and his partner left, the second friend also left with his girl. He said it was late and I'd better call it a day too, but I decided to stay behind with my partner. She said her place was not far and she offered to cook some ramen for me back at her place. But on the way, I got a call from my mother.
Where the heck are you? Why aren't you home already?
She said. I still live with my parents, by the way. Mom, I'm by a friend's. I'll come home soon, don't worry, I said.
Knock it off and come home right away. Your dad has collapsed.
My dad suffers chronic high blood pressure. Now I, of course, had to rush back home. I turned to tell my partner of the night, but she was gone. Where's she gone? To an alleyway to pee? After calling for her good 10 times around or so, I gave up, got a taxi home. How's Dad? What happened? I asked Mom as soon as I arrived.
Hush, boy. Your dad is sleeping.
Is he okay?
He's fine. It's just I had a dream of you wandering around drunk, and a woman caught and dragged you away. I tried to stop her, but my God, how fierce the bitch was. She said she was so lonely, and you were hers now. That's why I called you. And, lied about your dad to make you come home. Now, take a shower and go to bed. You stink, Mom said.
I could reach the second friend only later in the afternoon.
What was he with you last night? Did you get home all right?
Was the first thing he said. What do you mean? I just wanted to have some more drink with my girl, though it didn't quite turn out to be, I said.
What, your girl? There were just 2 girls last night. That's why I wondered why you insisted so much to stay behind alone at the karaoke. I was worried because you usually don't behave like that even when you get drunk.
I was just dumbfounded. Could it be all true? I found it out only later, but the district Inns hall we were in that night was once infamous for being haunted. During the large-scale redevelopment of the district in the early 90s, many were injured and died, many more than what the hushed-down media reported. Among the cheap bars and restaurants, rumors were rampant. Like a client came in, made an order, but disappeared without a trace when the order was brought out. Or a sole client asked for 2 portions of an order as well as the second set of the table setting. I'm usually not very superstitious, nor I believe all such rumors, but I must confess I try to avoid that particular district ever since. This is what my old mother experienced one winter night back in 1957. My parents then lived in a small village in Hongsong, Chungcheong Province, and my oldest sister was but a baby. It was a particularly cold night. A snowstorm raged all evening long and just died down into midnight, enough for Mom could hear the heavy ring of the bell from the distant Buddhist temple. What broke the silence was the dog outside. Its barking got louder and more intense, and with that, the baby, my oldest sister, also started crying. Mom checked on her and found her whole body hot with fever. Mom tried to breastfeed her, but baby's cry only got more intense, now more like a scream. Mom didn't know what to do in that chaos. When... Mom. At first, it sounded like a wind blowing through the stone fence wall. But no, it wasn't wind. It was a human voice. A weird one, too. It sounded like a woman whose voice had gone hoarse a big time, monotonous, almost lifeless. But how could that be? What kind of mad woman would be out here in the remote village at this time of the night? Besides, the snowstorm earlier was so heavy that snow piled to knee-high, and it was impossible that anybody would be out and about. Mom was scared. She shook my dad to wake up, but Dad, who finished a full pot of rice wine and knocked himself out from the early evening, only groaned and moaned and didn't get up. Mom thought twice and opened a paper door to the yard. A dark silhouette of a woman was standing at the gate against the snow-covered white world.
"Who is it, so late at night?"
Mom asked, trying to suppress the quiver in her voice.
"Ma'am, I'm starving,"
the woman said. Indeed, the woman's attire looked desperate even from afar. Must be a beggar. Kind-hearted Mom took instant sympathy for her. She went to the kitchen and quickly set out a tray full of food that was meant to be the family's breakfast. As she got closer to the woman to let her in, Mom realized she looked even more miserable than she initially thought. Under the rag that was wrapped around her head were two sunken eyes, all black and blue around. The lips were chapped like a dry land, just as her hands wrapped under pieces of rags. The layers of rags couldn't hide a skeletal body underneath either. Now Mom felt even more for this poor beggar.
"Oh dear, in this freezing weather. Come in, come in."
Mom invited the woman into the room, saying,
"Into the room. Warm yourself up inside."
But the woman insisted.
"I couldn't possibly."
At least she more than welcomed the food. Sitting on the edge of the open floor, the woman went at the food with her hands, not even bothering to use spoon and chopsticks. Food went all over her face and hands, but she didn't seem to have a mind to care about such. Mom only felt even more pity for the beggar. In no time, on the tray were empty bowls flung about messily. The woman belched loudly and politely bowed to Mom.
"Thank you so much. I won't forget this."
Then she stood up and walked towards the gate. But even before she reached there, she just disappeared into the thin air like a whiff of smoke. Mom finally realized the woman wasn't human and felt her hair standing on ends. She must have been a ghost, most likely of a poor woman who was frozen to death and in hunger. When Mom gathered herself, she noticed how silent it all was again. The dog stopped the ferocious barking, and her baby wasn't crying either. She hurriedly went into the room, and the baby was smiling carefreely, as if her desperate scream just some moments ago was a lie. Mom then came out to put the tray away, and saw the bowls and dishes on it were still full of food, just as she prepared for the woman. But the food were not as they were before. Somehow the rice lost its glisten, and now was dry and crumbly. The other dishes were the same, as if something had sucked out the energy and spirit of them. Mom had to throw them away in the end. Time passed, and the baby, my oldest sister, grew up to be a uni student. As a fresh woman, she joined a hiking club. On their first hiking outing to Bukhan Mountain, she slipped and fell off a steep slope. Fortunately, she managed to catch on a tree branch and could be rescued by her colleagues. Considering the height she fell, some scratches on her knees and elbows were really nothing. But what really strange was what she recounted later. Just a second before she fell, she heard a weird whisper in her ear, a voice resembling an air blowing out of a balloon.
"Watch out! Stop!"
She said if the voice had not stopped her and she had taken a step further, where she fell down would have been a cliff, not a slope, which should have killed her. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I think paranormal world is a reflection of a normal world we live in, and I tend to view ghosts, provided they exist, should be also just as diverse as we people, and come with their own stories and needs. So I appreciate these type of ghost stories too, that are a bit different from the usual shock and horror. Did you enjoy them too? I hope so. If you enjoyed my work, please give it a thumbs up and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. If you're interested particularly in Korean culture or just love a bit of spooky and weird, I'm sure my channel has something to offer for you. If you'd support me more directly, I have a Buy Me a Coffee account, the link's in the description, or there's a super thanks option here on YouTube too for a small donation. Thank you. Until next Sunday, stay safe and take care.